Hi everyone, and welcome to Otakusphere Weekly. I am Karen, and with me tonight are Sal.
Good evening.
LB.
Hello.
And Lifesong.
Hi.
Okay, this is a bit of a special episode this evening, because even though we normally just discuss currently airing anime, we don't want to just be limited to stuff that's airing right now, so we want to periodically do shows where we look back at anime we've seen before. So one show that we've all seen that seemed like a good candidate for discussion was Sword Art Online, so we're going to get into that tonight. I guess I'll just start with kind of my general views on Sword Art Online, then let you guys chime in. I kind of feel like when we're discussing Sword Art Online, we're talking about maybe several different shows, or at least two different shows. And there's one of those shows is a fairly mature series that actually has a lot of themes in common with Ghost in the Shell, in that it deals with how technology is going to really impact our quality of life going forward and makes you ask interesting questions about that. And then there's another show inside it that's kind of targeted maybe 10 or 15 years younger in demographic than the first show, and is a little bit tedious and a little annoying at times. And I really like the first show, and I kind of tolerate the second show, and I wonder why that is. Is it just like a cynical thing that the less mature parts are just to widen the appeal so it won't only appeal to people who like, say, Ghost in the Shell, or is there something else going on there? I've been baffled about this for about, 4 years, or however long Sword Art Online's been out. So that's my very general take on it. LB, how do you feel about SAO overall?
When it first came out, I was such a huge fanboy for it. I loved it. I was literally one of those people who would sit there, and 5 minutes before each new episode was set to go up on Crunchyroll, and I would watch and I would have my snack, I'd have my drink, I'd watch the countdown go down, and then as soon as it hit 0, I'd hit refresh, and I'd start watching the episode, and yeah, I was such a huge fanboy for it. Over the years, I can totally admit, it's not a perfect series, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still something that I really enjoy. I still, maybe once a year, maybe once every other year, give or take, just depending on my mood, but I shelled out the $80 a volume to get the Blu-rays from Aniplex. I, still rewatched it when the mood strikes me. So, yeah, but no, I'm still a big fan of it overall.
Okay. Sal?
Well, with you all, I agree, it's not, the best anime in the entire universe. It's not, like the filet mignon of animes, but I like everyone, I enjoyed the show overall. Weirdly, though, I didn't watch it when it aired on Crunchyroll as it was broadcasting. I actually watched it more down the road when it premiered on Toonami.
Oh, so you had already
watching the dub.
Okay, you already knew kind of the show's reputation for better or for worse, and you're actually watching it.
Yeah. So when I watched it, I kind of kept my expectations at a minimum. So, I watched the first half. As much as a lot of people say, oh, the first half is probably the strongest. I kind of felt that it had some pacing issues in terms of the first half, in terms of Kirito leveling up, just because I kind of wanted to see him kind of go through each level of the game throughout that arc.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think the pacing specifically is something we're going to want to talk about. So let's come back to that a little later.
I could actually say some stuff in relation to the light novel just from friends that read. But anyways, despite the second half having the most controversy because of certain stuff, which at the end of the day wasn't too bad, I don't know, I kind of felt the second half had a better pacing in the second half just because of the consistency and the premise for it.
I'm kind of weighing that in my mind, because I'm so used to everyone saying that in the first season of Sword Art Online, the Aincrad arc is good and the Fairy Dance arc is kind of stretched out and tedious, so I don't know if I can agree with you about the pacing, but I can understand liking the feel of the Fairy Dance arc more.
No, well, yeah, I was saying basically in Aincrad, Kirito's strength was going a little bit too fast, but in Fairy Dance, I kind of felt it was at a smoother pace while he was trying to save Asuna in that arc.
That's true, because he actually had to acclimate to playing a different game.
He didn't skip any stages. You actually saw his progression.
I kind of disagree. He basically comes into the game in that part, and he's like, oh, look, I accidentally have all my stuff translating over.
He did have to learn how to fly, though.
He did have to learn how to fly.
Life, what do you want to say about the show in general?
I'm a pretty big fan of Sword Art Online. I think I really had to break it into arcs. Like Aincrad arc, I really love the Aincrad arc. I do know what Sal's talking about with the pacing to a degree. Like the first couple of episodes, I wasn't completely sold. There's that little mystery arc, like the 2-episode mystery arc at the very beginning of Sword Art Online. And believe it or not, I was actually mocking it back then. Just that arc in particular, it didn't really do anything for me. But then, when it got into the meat of the story, I just really fell in love with it.
Hell yeah, same here.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it is really up and down. I can't compare to Ghost in the Shell because I've only watched a little bit of Ghost in the Shell.
Oh, you're missing out.
I can say that I do feel like there's a big discrepancy in the quality of the storytelling, and I think part of that is the first 2 novels, which is what the first anime was. I believe the first anime adapted were written a long time before everything else. So the author had a lot more time to mature, probably as a writer, and I think that I haven't read the novels themselves, but I think that the storytelling quality jumps up significantly after that point.
Yeah, I haven't read the light novels either, but Wilson has, and I've heard from other people who have, and the consensus seems to be that it's a bit rocky in the beginning and then gets better, more consistent towards the end.
Considering that
he's even gone back and he's republishing like in a re-edited edition of the first 2. So
yeah, if I remember correctly, I think Yen Press might be bringing over the re-edited version of the novel as well too.
I think the first one's out already.
Yeah, I can't keep track of all the Sword Art Online product Yen Press releases.
Since SAO started off since Kawahara wrote SAO as a web novel, even when it got published into an actual light novel by Dengeki Bunko, whoever the editor was didn't take the time to actually look over Kawahara's work and say, look, your writing needs to be fixed. You need to fix these things to meet our standards. But yet they published it as it was.
To be fair, he probably still, even back then, is above the standards of a significant portion of light novels.
Gotcha. Well, there's also the factor, too, that the target audience for light novels is generally high school students.
High school students, young adults, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you guys a question, and I'm going to do what I said I wasn't going to do, which is deal with other people's opinions about the show as opposed to ours, but I want to ask you guys this because I'm genuinely curious. It's not like when we're all saying, as we talk about the show, yeah, I really, really like it, but it varies in quality a lot. Some parts are very good and some parts are really bad. And it's like, it's not like there's anything unusual about saying an anime having ups and downs. But why do you think with Sword Art Online, like, it's so, people get so caught up with it in the downs to the point where they won't give the series credit for doing anything good because they're like, oh, well, I didn't like that arc with the fairies, therefore this series is stupid and everything it does will always be stupid. Like, why does Sword Art Online get that treatment in particular? Does that question even make any sense? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I think what you mean. Well, I've got a quick take on that, and I think that's a significant portion of people, at least that write about and blog about anime, when they go into any show, they kind of come into it with a mentality of, I want to judge this. And when you look at Sword Art Online from it, I want to judge this, and it's not really clicking perspective, where you just don't really relate with the characters. I think it's really easy to pull it apart from a sort of mechanical standpoint, because like even in the beginning, when the story starts, you think you're going to get one thing, and it morphs into something. I mean, it morphs into something different.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little things you could, and I'm okay with it in the case of Sword Art Online because I think it hinted at what it was going to do. There's a lot of little things you can tear into.
Yeah. LB?
I think the thing with Sword Art Online, and what I think is really interesting about it, is that I think that the people who really dislike it are really just a big vocal minority. Because, I mean, even years down the line, when I go to a convention, I still see tons of people cosplaying as Kirito and Asuna and everything. People do love this series, but it's the ones that hate watched it that are the ones that are screaming the loudest, and that thus, they get the most attention. I don't think that the majority of people out there hate this series, or I think there's a good chunk of people who just liked it and didn't love it, but I know that there's a lot of people who loved this show for whatever reason. But it's just the ones who, the minority that just spent the time to hate watch it and scream about it all the time. They're the ones that get the attention because they're being the most vocal about it. I mean, just to give an example, I remember I participated in an anime Secret Santa one year, and the person who I was assigned, to recommend a series to, I looked at their watch list, and they gave the entire first season, for Aincrad and Fairy Dance, a rating of 1 on their list. They gave it a rating of 1, but then I looked down further and saw that they still watched like 8 episodes of the of the Gun Gale Online arc, and it's like, really. You hated it enough to give it a 1, but you still watched 8 episodes of the next season. Give me a break.
I almost hate to use this term, but go ahead, Life. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say something real quick, and that is the reason I say when I said online reviewers and bloggers, it really is that community specifically that hates members of that community specifically that hate Sword Art Online. You won't find that hate anywhere else.
Yeah, it's like there's a vocal minority that really dislikes it, and a disproportionate number of those people happen to be anime bloggers. That's just how it works.
And truth to be told, SAO is considered a mainstream anime now.
Yeah, and that's another big thing, is that, anything that hits the mainstream is suddenly evil and can't be liked, or else you're a traitor or some shit like that. And it's like, really? Just, like what you like.
It's funny, because it's like the opposite of Western mainstream media, where most of it seems to be accepted.
Yeah, part of it's also the whole almost harem-esque aspect of it. The fact that it's so popular, I think, actually really upsets people, a certain audience of people, because of what it is. Just because of what it is, not because of how good it is, but because of what it is.
Yeah, and actually, since you brought it up, I mean, Sal. Well, before we move on, Sal, did you want to add anything further to the why is SAO so hated discussion?
Wow. I'm guessing it might have been more of an expectation thing, like when people watch Aincrad, maybe they were expecting the whole show to be like, wow, this show's like everything we wanted from Dot Hack. It has the mystery angle, it has like the action, and then because like Fairy Dance kind of fell into a lot of usual anime tropes, even though the Aincrad kind of had a little bit of those too, and then people just let their expectation kind of, I guess, drive them into despair or whatever, and they weren't able to appreciate Fairy Dance for what it was, or what the overall thing that maybe Kawahara was going for the entirety of SAO.
Yeah, and it's good that you reminded me about Dot Hack, because I did play Dot Hack, not immediately when it came out, but pretty soon after, like, I don't know, 2003, 2004, so I think people who played Dot Hack the previous decade were kind of primed for something like SAO. But because Lifesong mentioned the harem aspect, I just wanted to, that's kind of a pet peeve of mine when people are dissing on the harem aspect. First of all, I'm okay with harems existing. Like, you don't have to like them.
Oh. But you know what I find really ironic? Like, a lot of the harem and quote-unquote incestual stuff that people criticize in SAO, like, I've seen it in plenty of animes that are considered classics. Why didn't anyone rage about those when that show aired? One example is Tenchi Muyo.
Time.
Yeah. People weren't on the internet all day then. But this is why I wanted to do Sword Art Online, because there's so many topics I want to bring up that every time you guys say something, I'm like, oh wait, I want to talk about that, and like I keep getting it, I'm like losing track of everything I want to talk about. But I wanted to come back to the harem thing. Like, I think harems are annoying when the main character, whether it's a guy or a girl, everybody loves them for no reason because they're totally meant to be a complete self-insert a complete insert character for the audience, and like that's not like morally wrong or something. I mean, it's okay that some shows exist on that appeal, but it's kind of boring from a writing perspective.
It's just boring.
Yeah, whereas from Kirito, you understand why the girls in the show, different girls in the show, start to have feelings for him, because he goes, he does things for them and shows, a kind of character that most people in that environment are not showing. So it's kind of like, wait, so if someone actually earns someone's affection, it's still wrong because, a lot of people like him, therefore it's, I don't know, it really works.
And there's the fact that was a life or death game, so who knows when those people survive or die, they weren't sure if they could escape.
I have quite literally lost friends defending Kirito.
Oh my god, yeah,
Uh-huh.
I can believe it.
No, as I told you in a conversation in Discord, like I am for him, not against him.
Yeah, I do find that a lot of the hate, well, people in general, their opinion on Sword Art Online tends to be split into whether or not how much they like Kirito.
Oh, another thing to add too, like apparently in the light novels, like the light novels kind of went into more detail about Kirito's character, like his motive for becoming really powerful in terms of leveling up.
Yeah, Wilson said that. You
some
know,
other-
I really should have read the light novels in anticipation for this podcast. Maybe someday.
Because that was like the only downside that the anime kind of failed to do from what I heard. Like they failed to kind of capture some of those monologue lines between the characters that let you dive into their feelings more.
I still kind of feel like I understood Kirito's motivations really well, just watching what they did show us.
Yeah, I did understand them too. I was just saying, like maybe if they had a little bit of it, maybe most of those other people would have understood it too.
Well, there's
Yeah,
one...
they'd have been a little harder pressed to say that it wasn't there.
Yeah.
There was
If I can interject real fast, I'm sorry, I
Sure,
didn't mean
go
to
ahead.
cut you off, Aaron. Jumping back just a little bit to the harem aspect, though, that's something that I don't even really understand why people are saying, oh, it's another generic harem. Because, I mean, each member of his harem appears in the series for, 1-2 episodes, and then they're gone. And then
it's not just...
focus on Asuna. And it's like,
Yep.
so why... I mean, I understand that there are other girls who have feelings for him, and yes, that does technically introduce harem aspects, but it's not like, he has 5 girls in every episode who are vying for his attention in over-the-top ways. So I don't even understand that particular argument.
Yeah, it's not just that it's a harem aspect. That's one of that argument really was used more early on than later on. Although I still hear it. It's also like camera angles and other little things that I really didn't think were that bad in Sword Art Online. But when you're looking for a reason to get angry about it, they are there.
Yeah. I think there was only one instance where that sort of thing was really egregious, and that was well, there's the scene with Asuna at the end of Fairy Dance where she basically gets sexually assaulted by Sugo, but it wasn't even the camera angles in that scene so much as the fact that they did that stupid thing with her getting kidnapped by the tentacle monster a couple of episodes before that.
They did do that. Yes,
that was rather over the top and silly and unnecessary. But
I think that's its job. That pissed me off so much. I think that particular scene was successful.
But you know what, Life? I bet. Here's a question: like when Kirito messed up the main villain at the end of Fairy Dance, like wasn't that very satisfying when he cut the guy into pieces?
Yeah, it was a satisfying scene.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with, just to clarify, I don't have a problem with the fact that that scene with Asuna happened. Some people have a problem with that scene even existing. I'm just saying, when you see a scene like that, you want to think it's being done for narrative purposes, and it's not being done as kind of like a cheap titillation thing. And it's like, it's hard to give them the benefit of the doubt that they weren't trying to get any cheap titillation out of that when poor Asuna in that outfit had been susceptible to tentacles like 2 episodes previous, so...
Yeah.
But I think that was the only instance where it was like, okay, not too smart to juxtapose those 2 scenes, guys. But for the most part, I didn't really find the camera angles or anything that distracting. It was just kind of pretty mild for the most part. Getting back to Kirito, here's the thing, my thing with Kirito. I don't think he's a particularly interesting protagonist, but I think he's the tool the story needs to do what it needs to do. Because, I mean, yeah, Kirito's really strong, and a lot of people don't like him for that reason, because, like, oh, he's so good at the game, it would be so much more interesting if it was a weak character, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, yeah, maybe it would be, but that would also be a completely different story.
Yep.
Like, if we had, like, getting back to what you were saying, Sal, like, I think we've maybe thought at the beginning of Sword Art Online we were going to get, kind of this saga of someone, like, trying to survive in the game and, painstakingly leveling up. And then, of course, it turns out that Kirito's, like, a god-tier player already, so he just knows how to exploit the system and become, like, level 100, and that's not what we got at all. And it's like, yeah, I can see how maybe you wanted that other story where someone really has to struggle inside a game to survive, but that's not the story Sword Art Online was telling. That doesn't automatically make the story it is telling bad, because it didn't do, the thing you immediately assumed it was going to do.
Oh yeah, to add to that, I kind of have a feeling that perhaps after the SAO arc, maybe Kawahara's purpose of the story is to kind of cover the aftermath of SAO, like what the game did to the people inside and how it's affecting the real world, because a lot of the other arcs kind of connected back to SAO.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all do. It's one of the things I really like about the series.
Yeah, like, well, when Aincrad ended, then I knew that Sword Art Online was going to continue for at least another 12 episodes or something. I was like, well, what are they going to do? Get trapped in another game? You know, but then the more you see the show, the more you realize, like, oh, it's the actual Sword Art Online experience was the catalyst for all these other things that happen in dealing with virtual reality. It's not all about Sword Art Online, so...
One thing for sure, I can't wait for them to finally adapt the current arc in the novels, because I heard that one gets pretty crazy with how it begins and what he goes through.
It's something called, like, what is it called? Like the Eliciization arc or something? Something to that effect?
Something
weird
like
thing.
that. Yeah, it's being turned into a movie, I believe.
I think from what I heard, the movie was gonna, it was gonna be an original. Because the problem with the current arc is that it's still going. It hasn't even ended. So to this date, it's like the longest arc SAO has had.
I suspect we'll get another anime. I mean, it is super popular.
So if we do get an anime, it's probably going to end on a cliffhanger. If it's going to be like 24 or 26 episodes again.
Oh, that would piss me off.
You know, Sword Art Online has had a really good streak so far with ending at good points. So.
Yeah, it really has. I totally agree. There has yet to be an arc that they've told where I didn't really like how it ended. I mean, there's only one arc in in either season 1 or season 2 of Sword Art Online that I didn't particularly like, and that was the Caliber arc that was right before in the second season.
Yeah.
Oh god, that
I agree with you on that one, LB. Like,
yeah, that arc was just so boring. And
everyone loves to hate on that arc. I don't know. I thought it was fun. It was like a fun little bonus thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
it wasn't great, but.
I wasn't aware that even counted as an arc. I thought that was just like, I don't know.
It's only like 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah,
maybe,
but
maybe
if
it was
I
also
had to
because
choose the least favorite one, that would be it.
Oh, I guess for me it was because I kind of saw a similar arc in Dot Hack Sign, which was like a special with like which involved like Mimuru when she first entered the world, and when she was doing like this one dungeon quest, and she ended up teaming up with this character that was played by 3 different people, and it was going to be like their last time playing the game, and they wanted to do something really memorable with their character. So I guess maybe the way how that arc was told versus Caliber could have played a factor.
Wait, was this like a Hack Sign OVA or something? Because I saw Hack Sign, I don't remember that.
It was only included with like in the home release, and they even had like they even had a special where the cast from Dot Hack Sign met the cast from the original game series.
Really?
Yeah, kind of like as a post after saving the world in the game series, like they just had this reunion. They just held this reunion.
I never knew that. I have to see if like Mimuru meet Black Rose. And okay, I'm now fangirling about a completely different series, and this isn't productive.
Oh, yeah, I was just bring that up because it was kind of coincided with that arc. Yeah.
Another question that just occurred to me.
Maybe if I did play like more MMOs like Life did, I could have found a way. I could have appreciated that arc because I understand the angle Life's coming from.
Sword Art Online romanticizes everything about MMOs.
Yeah, it really does.
As opposed to Never a Girl Online.
Which it's different.
We'll totally get into later, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, one question I wanted to ask, and I don't want to keep this on too long, so I'll try to keep the questions to not ask too many more, but, oh god, while I was introducing the question, I forgot the question. Okay, you know how before I was saying, like, well, maybe it would be really interesting to get that anime about the dude who really has to struggle to survive in the game that's trying to kill you, blah, 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 but that's not the anime we got? Do you think maybe some of the bitterness directed at Sword Art Online is because with as many of these trapped in a video game animes we actually never get that story? Like, I don't think I've seen one
actually
yet.
have.
Yeah, we did.
We did?
Yeah, we did.
Recently.
It was Grimgar. Right, the one I haven't seen. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I really have to see that then, obviously. Because I thought
that's totally what that series is about. As far as I'm aware, I've only watched a couple of episodes, but yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's all about people who...
I finished
Sorry,
it. That is what it's about.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm not just talking out my ass. Good.
Okay, because I remember I thought back when Log Horizon started a while back, I thought maybe Log Horizon would be that show, but no, Log Horizon really isn't that show either. So.
No, Log Horizon is MMO economics. Yeah. That's what Log Horizon is.
So is it kind of like a poor cousin to Spice and Wolf, your favorite?
it is a poor cousin. I still like it.
Okay. Actually, talking about going into shows looking for something to make fun of, I think I went into Log Horizon looking for things to bitch about, and of course I found them. And of course I didn't realize at the time I was doing it, but like years later, people were like, that series was actually good. And I was like, oh, whoops. So, it can happen to any of us. Some days you're just in a bitchy mood and you take it out on anime, and it's not the anime's fault. But anyway, in preparation for this podcast, I actually didn't watch Mother's Rosario, and I think I mentioned this on a previous episode. I hadn't watched it because I knew it was going to be very sad, and I just was not in the mood for something sad for a long time. And then we were about to do this podcast, and I was like, okay, I really should actually finish Season 2 of Sword Art Online if we're going to be talking about it. So, I watched, all 5 episodes or whatever it is of Mother's Rosario in one go, and, I used my magical power to stop time. I then cried for 40 years and then resumed time. But it's kind of like all the criticisms, all these little nitpicky things that we could talk about in regard to SAO, I don't think a single one of them applies to Mother's Rosario. There's
Mother's Rosario was the arc that anyone who had read the light novel already when Season 2 started, they were telling... I very distinctly remember all of them just, telling everyone who would even remotely listen that it doesn't matter what happens in the season, stick it out until they get to Mother's Rosario. Stick it out until they get to Mother's Rosario, because it'll make it all worth it. Mm-hmm. And I watched it, I stuck it out, there were good points, there were bad points, but I stuck it out to Mother's Rosario, and I went back and I agreed with them. That arc was just what the series needed, and it was a great way to end the second season.
Yeah, and what was great about that arc is that, I mean, it really gets you thinking that, the way, the kind of studies they're doing, well, not, just everything they're doing with virtual reality now, how is that going to affect life? How is that going to affect people who are perhaps terminally ill or fighting illnesses? It seemed like what they were grappling with in that arc was really not far from reality at all.
Then there's the fact that Axel World is in the same universe as SAO, but way in the future.
That's a whole nother, something, I don't even know. Life?
I really love Mother's Rosario. It ended up being something real personal for me too. So many of the things Yuki says is things that thoughts I've had. I was really sick when I was younger. I'm not going to go into any detail about that. I think you guys kind of already know some of it, but I was able to really relate with it, and it was just holy crap! I can't believe this is actually in an anime. It ended up being one of those. I want to say that arc was out of all the Sword Art Online, I don't know that I'd call any of it a masterpiece. I'd call that arc a masterpiece, the Mother's Rosario, because it was so personal. I don't even know that I can accurately rate it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, I mean, obviously I don't know what you mean because it was really personal, but I know what it means to have that kind of personal experience where you can't.
Right.
You don't know if you're objective. And that arc could have easily, as much as I felt like they were dealing with genuine emotion and real issues, it could have easily kind of became over the top, kind of mawkish, but it avoided that, first because of Yuki's personality, and it also avoided that because Asuna had that kind of lower tier conflict with her mother, which you wouldn't think would be a good match for that arc. You'd think, considering what Yuki's going through, Asuna having a fight with her mother about what high school she attends would just be stupid BS, but it actually worked really well. And I can't even put into words how well that juxtaposition worked, because I think it was almost because of Yuki's situation, you understood that Asuna was gaining perspective on her own situation, but without either of them being granted, but it wasn't done in such a way where Asuna's oh, well, Yuki's going through so much, I shouldn't feel sad about my mom. It's still, yeah.
Yeah, the thing was you get to the end and Yuki's all, what was I living for? And Asuna's conclusion was, well, I still have the lessons you've taught me.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking of Yuki's Sword Art Online funeral, all the guilds bow down.
Yeah.
And then after that, pretty soon after that, I watched the episode of Shonen Maid where Chihiro goes to his mother's grave. And why? Why anime? Why
yeah.
are you doing this to me?
Yeah. I watched when I first watched it, and actually even now when I watch it, I was anime bloggers will sometimes mock the tears falling down the chin thing. I'm okay, I've actually done that now. It's real. It can happen. That's possible.
Yeah, it can happen. There's something I wanted to get to earlier that before we move on to a currently airing anime, I want I want to address, and that's the pacing, because that's one area where I think Sword Art Online is like genuinely bizarre. Because there's that whole thing they do at the beginning, perhaps due to Kawahara's inexperience, as we were discussing before, but you're expecting a certain pace, then you get a completely different pace, which is much faster than you expect. And then during the fairy dance arc, well, Sal doesn't think so, but a lot of people, including me, think that the pacing is a little bit sluggish there, and it's like, it's very weird how the pacing is kind of like all over the place, and I don't think I've seen that quite as much variation as I have with SAO.
I can explain a little bit of it. In Sword Art Online, with the first 2 arcs, a lot of the first episodes, like the first 3 or 4 episodes, including the mystery arc, they're actually side stories that he wrote.
Yeah.
And they weren't actually in the original novel. So, what I think it was A1 Pictures did is they kind of just pieced it all together. And so there you got these short little side stories that got episodes along with the light novels.
Just hearing you explain that, it's kind of like, that approach just seems really weird, like whatever made them think that was the way to approach the story. Yet on the other hand, at the time, I thought it was incredibly ballsy. I was like, wait, so we just got the declaration of kind of war on the gamers, you're trapped in the game, and now it's like 3 months later, and wait, now it's 6 months, what the hell? You know, I was really, I don't know if ultimately how much I liked it, but I was very impressed that they tried it.
Oh yeah,
So,
and there are still a few side stories that didn't make it to the anime that are still only in the book, from what I've heard.
Yeah, and I think they summed some of them up pretty quickly too.
And then to add to that, as I said before, they also cut out the monologues too. That was another factor with the pacing as well.
And that's a common light novel adaptation thing. There's the 3rd episode, I think it was. It was like, that was my first hit.
Because in shonen manga adaptations, they always keep those monologues and exposition.
Yeah, you're right. They do tend to do that in shonen manga.
I was just going to ask LB if he wanted to contribute, if he had any thoughts on the pacing, because he hasn't spoken in a minute or 2.
In terms of pacing, I am in kind of the minority here. I personally, I didn't have any issues with the pacing. It jumped from time to time, but they very clearly labeled that, this is happening now, this is happening now, this is happening a little bit later, Kirito is now this level, Kirito is now this level, so it made sense to me, and I didn't really have any issues with it. So, even now, years later, that thought hadn't even really occurred to me that, there was uneven or weird pacing. It just, I just accepted it at the time, and it never became a factor for me.
I'd say I think it's worth pointing out that as far as light novel adaptations go, they all have a level of pacing issue just because they're an adaptation, and they kind of follow a pattern. You can kind of see where they're fitting things in if you just watch a whole bunch of light novel animes, which I have, and they all have, like, they have to fit the episodes in a certain way, and I think Sword Art Online is actually one of the better ones.
Yeah, well, I think I haven't... It's not that I haven't seen light novel anime, because I definitely have, but I think I probably wasn't aware when I was watching which ones were based on light novels, so I'm not as, keenly aware as you are of, oh, well, this is a light novel sort of thing.
I could watch 4 episodes of an anime, and if it's a light novel, I could tell by that, just by the way it's paced.
Yeah, you watch enough anime, you eventually are able, within the first 2 episodes, oh, this is a manga adaptation, oh, this is a light novel adaptation. Yeah, I totally get what you're saying there.
I mean, I'm not always right, and it's actually really exciting when I'm wrong, because it means I have something new to learn, but usually.
Okay, and maybe one more thing I want to bring up before we move on to more current pastures. There's also the aspect of the show that it's cool people fighting with swords and magic, and it's often... I'm kind of not entirely sure how to assess the animation quality in Sword Art Online. I'm actually not that good at that. People will say, oh, you could tell the animation budget for this such and such episode is really high. And I'll be like, really? You could? But just the style of it all, I think that's a big appeal of the show also. And even though I'm not that keen on the fairy dance arc, I like the way they added magic and the different races. And you could totally imagine how it would feel to be playing that game. So I really like that aspect of it as well, even though it's probably the most shallow aspect of the show. Sal?
Oh, in regards to the animation and stuff?
Well, not just the animation, but the whole gaminess of it. Like, the fact that you get, well, basically the fact that it's a video game anime, I guess, and it's kind of like the popularizer of video game anime. MMO anime, to be more precise.
Yeah, I guess compared to, like, let's say Dot Hack, like, yeah, the action was actually pretty cool.
Well, Dot Hack is kind of in a very strange category on its own. Like,
Well, that show was more of a mystery, a mystery series taking place in an MMO instead of a show within an MMO about the characters playing the game.
Have you guys ever heard of the play Waiting for Godot?
No, sorry.
No, I'm not familiar. Sorry.
Okay. Well, English major dork is in here, but it's an existentialist play from, I don't know, I think it was written in the 40s or 50s, meaning it makes no sense, and it's just people screaming like, why are we here? Who knows? We're waiting for Godot, and they just say things like that over and over again. And I heard someone refer to Dot Hack sign as waiting for Tsukasa, and I was laughing hysterically. Because it's like...
Well, didn't they reference Waiting for Godot in Dot Hack sign? I remember someone mentioned
they did,
the
because
book.
someone asked Mimuru what she was waiting for, and I think she's actually is waiting for Tsukasa, and they were like, whoa, you're like waiting for a Godot or something, and then walks away. So, okay, Life Song, anything to say about the gaminess or so on and so forth?
I think that Sword Art Online takes, like, the magic of MMOs and, like, it takes the aspect that you really wish MMOs were, and it makes that into an anime. MMOs aren't actually that cool. But when you stop and you think back on them and you remember the fond parts of them that you really love, and the kind of way that they a fond memory becomes better with time. That's kind of what it reminds me of and how it fits in.
So Sword Art Online is the MMO that you lie to yourself to tell yourself you played.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. I crack myself up with my lame deductions. LD?
In terms of, like, the actual gaminess, it's actually kind of interesting to me, because, I mean, I'm not a hardcore gamer in the least. I've spent, very little of time in my life actually playing MMOs, because I find them to be boring as all hell. But I remember I've watched this series, 2 or 3 times all the way through with my wife, and as I've mentioned on previous shows, she is a hardcore gamer. She loves gaming. I can tell you right now, she is downstairs gaming as we record this.
At this very moment.
Yeah, at this very moment, she is downstairs gaming. So, it's interesting how I actually learned quite a bit about gaming by watching this show with her, because she would actually point out, like, the PKing. She's like, oh, wow, I bet the author played Ultima Online, because PKing wasn't a thing until Ultima Online. And I was like, what, really?
It is. I will say it is fun. It is fun to sit down with some of my friends and guess at which MMOs these authors that write these stories have played, and we do have that conversation.
So, I mean, there was that, and then, like, the whole, we haven't really touched on this at all, and I'm actually kind of glad, because it's a whole nother can of worms. But, like, the whole, like, kind of cousin love into Fairy Dance arc, she actually made a really good point that, the only thing about that she found a little questionable is that she didn't know her brother's screen name from SAO, and that she didn't deduce who he was from that. But other than that, she found it totally believable that she could meet someone in a game, fall in love with them, and not realize that, she actually knew them in real life. She's like, yeah, that's something that could totally happen.
Yeah, well,
so, that was another thing that I was like, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, like, lots of little things like that, I watched it with her, and she would bring up, and I was like, oh, okay, I learned something new.
Well, as long as you mentioned that particular can of worms. The whole, sister not blood related who's in love with her brother thing, blah, blah, blah. That whole, story, I didn't have an issue with the way the Sword Art Online did the sister love thing, because it wasn't really it didn't really seem like it was exploiting it for any sort of cheap, whatever. I mean, Sukuha was a sympathetic character. You understood why she was feeling the way she did, and then they actually resolved it. I think it's annoying when, for some reason, I don't know why they do this, they do the brother-sister love thing as a shock value thing, and then it just, it's like this festering tumor in the show that doesn't go away. But Sword Art Online didn't do anything like that, so I don't really have an issue with it.
I hear a rubbing.
Is someone rubbing on your mic?
No. Well,
okay, because it sounds like someone is rubbing on it.
Oh, maybe it's my chair? I'll try not to move. Maybe I'm moving too much. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm not moving anymore. Before we move on to the next thing, I just want to ask, no one's actually played any of the Sword Art Online games that they've released, right?
I played a little bit.
I've wanted to, and I have come really close to pulling the trigger on actually buying the games for whenever they're available for PS3 or PS4, but I never have, but I've wanted to really badly.
I think I own all of them.
I just seen them in action, and if you're a fan of the game, they're actually kind of fun. They're actually kind of fun. They kind of bring instead of it taking place during a specific arc in SAO, they kind of give you a what if story with its own continuity.
Well, that's interesting. I actually don't know that much about them, which, considering that I'm a fan of the show and I'm a fan of, video games where you kill monsters and get loot and stuff, it seems like something I would like. But I think I've been afraid in the back of my mind that, there's no way the game is actually going to be as good as I want it to be. I want it to kind of feel like I'm playing the show, and it's not going to be that.
Yeah, my understanding is that they kind of tell their own stories as a what if, like Sal said. And what I've read, pretty much the reviews on most of them have been, if you are a fan of Sword Art Online, you will enjoy this. If you're not, you probably shouldn't bother.
Yeah, one example is with Hollow Fragment. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which if you decide to get that one, get the PS4 version because the localization is better. Because the original Hollow Fragment release was basically them using the Asian English translation, which had a lot of grammatical issues and a lot of stuff about piercing and penetrating in the lines for some reason.
Okay.
But anyway, going on, with Hollow Fragment, it was basically a what-if story. What if after they clear the 100th floor, something happens where everyone's trapped in SAO still, and you basically get to go through all the floors and fight all the bosses and stuff that you didn't see in the anime.
That's cool. I want to play that now. All right,
and you also get the bond with all the characters in the party too. So there's that too.
Okay, cool. All right, so you think we're done fangirling and fanboying out about SAO for now?
Yeah, I think so. I think we had a pretty good discussion there.
Yep.
Okay, and it's going to come back in some form, so it's probably not our last time discussing it.
I hope it does.
Yeah,
I hope so too.
I think we can feel pretty confident.
When the show gets a new season, and when that movie gets a theatrical release here, hopefully.
Yep. Okay, so somebody's setting off fireworks in my town, and I hope they know it's not the 4th of July yet. I think they're confused. All right. Just in case you were hearing banging from outside my window.
I did. I thought I was actually just about to ask if there were fireworks. So.
Yeah, people around here just rushing the season, man. Rushing the season. Enjoy the moment. Learn some man happy.
None of us in this house are looking forward to 4th of July because none of our dogs like fireworks.
It starts on the 3rd here. Stuff starts exploding.
Speaking of which, I forgot which country was doing it, but apparently a country started making it mandatory to use silent fireworks, where you still get the explosions, but you don't hear any loud noises.
That would be really awesome.
So since that, I forgot which country was doing it, but we need to bring that to America so that people's pets won't have to worry about being scared during 4th of July.
Yeah, that would be
they would never do that though. There'd be riots in the streets. I mean, the noise is part of the fun.
Yeah, because it's the whole, the bombs bursting in air.
Yeah.
All right, so after a totally unrelated tangent about fireworks, because thank you, my awful neighbors. Okay, we're going to move on to our Senpai League, and we have something unprecedented in the history of the podcast. Granted, the podcast has only been around for one season, but still, unprecedented. We decided that Shonen Maid was so good, it didn't belong in the little Kohai League, and it needed to be bumped up to the Senpai League. So, Shonen Maid 11 is up front this week. And, man, I am more into this show than, 75% of the things that are still airing this season, and I certainly did not think I'd be saying that. I mean, I always liked it. But it's interesting how I'm still kind of on pins and needles about what's going to happen between the characters on this show, and a lot of other stuff I'm I kind of take it or leave it. But as I mentioned earlier, In the most recent episode, Chihiro goes to his mother's grave, which of course he cleans because he's Chihiro. And he finally finds out that the mysterious old lady who he's been hanging out with occasionally is his grandma. And he kind of blanks upon finding that out because he's been meaning to kind of curse out his grandma probably for his whole life. But when he actually sees her, he doesn't know what to say. And I'm really interested to see how they're going to resolve that. Like, I'm wondering what the grandmother could possibly say to kind of make herself redeemable, I guess. LB?
I actually think you're talking about Shonen Maid 10, and the latest episode was 11 when he graduated up to grade 6.
Oh, you're right. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to clarify and make sure that everybody was on the same page.
Yeah, okay. Well, I still feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop in that arc. Like, I feel like the latest episode with the Cherry Blossom viewing was just kind of like giving us some space to breathe, sort of.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there. But yeah, no, I actually, this is one of those rare occasions where I feel really confident that I know how this show is going to end. Chihiro's not going with his grandmother. It's not going to happen. Him and Madoka have bonded very deeply, more deeply than he ever expected that they were going to. And so he's going to stay with Madoka. Everybody's going to be happy. It's going to be fine. And even despite, knowing that and feeling so confident in my head that that's exactly what's going to happen, I'm still looking forward to seeing how this series is going to end. And personally, I'm going to be really sad about it. I am going to be really heartbroken to say goodbye to this series.
Well, as Chihiro says in the preview for the next episode, though, I mean, there's still plenty of manga left, so maybe I'll get another season.
Maybe.
That was, I have to correct you. That wasn't Chihiro. That was his mom.
Oh,
and
right.
There was that little bit of bitter irony with her line about how all things in life have to come to an end. It's like, come on, did you really have to get her to say that?
Yeah.
I watched that immediately after rewatching bits of Sword Art Online, so I was kind of like, oh, come on.
You were already hitting the feels, and then they just give you another hit in the feels, and it's not fair.
Yeah, stop.
But to get back to what you were saying, LB, I don't really think there's any danger. It's not that I think he might go off with his grandmother, because it's more like, how are they going to end the series so that he doesn't hate her? Because I don't think they're going to end it on that note. But what can she reveal about the situation that will leave them in a place where they're okay with each other? Because right now, I don't know if he even would ever want to see her again, based on how he feels.
Well, I mean, my line of thinking so far is that he says in episode 11 that, if I'm recalling correctly, it's been a couple of days since I've watched the episode and I forgot to take notes because I'm stupid. But he basically says something along the lines of he wanted to yell at her, and he was so certain that as soon as he met one of his real relatives that he was just going to absolutely blast him. But the fact that he got to know this person before he found out that she was a relative softened the blow. And I think that in his heart, meeting her and spending that time with her and getting to know her without realizing that she's a relative has already moved him towards forgiving her in some way. I mean, I'm not saying it's 100% so far, but I think that he's already, moved past the bitterness because of that time that he spent with her and, when he got tea with her and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's part of the way there. I think there needs to be some resolution to that bitterness. That part of him obviously still feels towards her, because part of him still feels that way. Lysong, anything to add about Shonen Maid 11 other than that it keeps hitting you in the feels?
No, you guys have pretty much covered everything I would have said.
Okay. So we've got one more episode of Shonen Maid, episode 12, so I don't want to say I'm waiting on pins and needles for that episode, because I don't know, like, it's not something you wait on pins and needles for. Like, oh gosh, what is the grandmother going to say to the grandson? But I am just really interested to see how they're gonna resolve that. And somehow even the little things in Shonen Maid that really aren't important always get me thinking about my life. Something about the way they write the show does this. Like there was that scene a couple of episodes previous where the little girl runs away and Madoka hides her and she's like, "No, I hate my brother. I don't want to go home." And for some reason I immediately started thinking, "Oh God, what am I going to do when Gwen has a fight with me and she says she hates me? What am I going to do? Oh my God." Anyway. So something about the show just makes you think even when you don't want to. Alright, so we're going to move on to Kiznaiver, episode 12, which is the end, and I feel like I don't quite get Kiznaiver, and I really liked Maki's line when she says, you worry about what the other person thinks of you and what they're going to say, and you do that over and over again, and that's how you become friends, but I'm not entirely sure how to reconcile that with everything else that happened in the final episode. Like, I'm still, in the end, not entirely sure I get what the point of Kiznaiver was, and I feel like kind of dumb, because I feel like it should be obvious and staring me in the face. Lifesong, it seems like this is the kind of thing you may be able to explain.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where to even start. Yeah, I'm not, I'm trying to reconcile it with what Maki said, too, and now I'm... Okay, well, I'm just gonna have to drop that train of thought.
Well, maybe I can come at it from another angle. Like,
okay.
if what Maki was saying, which is that, okay, well, what makes you friends isn't something like the Kiznaiver system where you know what the other person's feeling. It's the act of not knowing and having to deal with that uncertainty that makes you grow closer. So it almost seems like something like the Kiznaiver system is totally unnecessary. But yet it also seems like the show was saying that, without the Kiznaiver system, they still never would have become friends. So it kind of was necessary also, but just maybe not necessary in the way that Sonozaki thought it was.
Yeah, I think that there's two sides to it. There's the fact that Sonozaki's their goal with the Kiznaiver system. I mean, there's the first goal with the Kiznaiver system, which is kind of to create empathy between everyone. So, world peace, yay! And in the beginning they had the whole 7 deadly sins thing where they brought up, and the reason they brought that up wasn't anything to do with the typical reasons that gets brought up in anime. It was to point out the fact that the characters were all very different people. And I think that really the story of Kiznaiver ultimately winds up being about the Kiznaiver system in particular winds up being about bringing different types of people together. And then in the end, when you get to what's going on in the big climax with the finale, they're flipping it around and saying, yeah, okay, sure, yes, it worked, it brought us together, we have this bond, but the way this bonding thing works isn't because of the Kiznaiver system. And Agata, I think was his name. I'm terrible with the names in the series.
Yeah, you got him right.
I did get it right? Okay. And I'm going to forget her name. The one who's running the show the whole time. Sonozaki. He's talking, when he's talking to her at the end, he's telling her, I actually had feelings for you back before any of this crazy stuff started. So, there's already empathy. There's already ways to connect. So if you try to reconcile the two, I don't know that I'd have to really put some thought into it to explain it better than that. Because for me, it's kind of a very intuitive thing. I don't know if I'm really explaining it properly or not.
What I'd like to believe the end of Kiznaiver was saying was that it wasn't the Kiznaiver system that brought the friends together. It was any experience like that which kind of breaks down the walls between people by just sort of making them have to be together, like physically be close to each other and have to talk to each other. People will become friends in that sort of situation. It didn't necessarily have to be the Kiznaiver system. It could have been they could have been trapped on an island together or something. But so
yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, I agree completely. It wasn't that it wasn't that the Kiznaiver system was necessary. It was that something was necessary.
Okay, because that's sort of what I wanted to think, but I felt like there wasn't, like, maybe the show didn't really give me evidence for that, so I just sort of was wondering if there was another point I was missing. I don't know.
Rather than being the ultimate point of the story, I would say that that's a part of it. But yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it.
Okay, Sal, I'm sorry, Lifesong and I have been talking about it for a while. What did you think of Kiznaiver 12?
Well, I do agree with you all. That was the overall theme of the show, was just the idea of how a situation can cause people to connect. It doesn't have to be the Kiznaiver. Well, yeah, but one thing I found interesting, it looks like it also covered the whole part also about how one should learn to, not take in, keep certain things for yourself and try to be more expressive, which kind of was in Sonozaki's case.
What do you mean?
Well, remember where they kind of hinted that the reason why she felt so much pain more than people is kind of because of her, I guess her desire that she believed that the Kiznaiver system's the only way to connect. because she was apparently alone her whole life, and maybe those emotions kind of amplified the system, leading to why she felt more pain than other people.
Oh yeah, she kind of wanted the pain because she wanted, whatever kind of connection to other people she could get because she felt so lonely, like that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I found it kind of where in the end, like, everyone was kind of like trying to convince her during that last moment.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a big part of the theme too winds up being happiness.
Also
the bonds being a means to an end, if that makes sense.
Also, that one line Maki said to, what's his name? I think Yuta, where basically, like, I want to make you fat so the pests don't flock to you. I thought that was very priceless. Basically showing what her final thoughts is on Yuta by the end.
That was adorable.
Also, Nico with the pompadour.
That was a very Trigger moment. They're like, we don't want you to forget that this is Trigger making this.
Still trying to compete with Chidori for Tenga's heart.
Yeah. Okay, so I
did want to point one weird thing about how Kiznaiver ended. It was like the final part when Sonozaki kind of said sure. Like, it wasn't a bad ending, but it was more like the timing of the music kind of felt weird, the way it ended there.
Unfortunately, I can't comment on it because I didn't notice that. I probably didn't have the volume up very loud, so I probably didn't notice the music.
Yeah, just because I feel like the music was very, like, too low instead of kind of getting that type of music. Okay, the show is ending, and now the music kind of syncs with the ending.
Okay, yeah, I wish I'd noticed, but I just could not tell you anything about the music in that scene. So, Life, did you notice anything?
I did not notice the music in that scene.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I said before, it was, like, super low. Like, I think wait, there's music playing? Like, I just went and raised the volume.
Yeah, it sounds more like Sal would have preferred that they did something different with the direction.
Yeah.
Just the sound. That's just the soundtrack. That's it.
Gotcha.
Other than that, it was perfect. I enjoyed it.
Okay, so this series overall, I feel like I didn't like it quite as much as I wanted to. Like, there was that one part near the end where they have the rainstorm and everything, and that part I thought was great. And then after that, it kind of dropped off for me a little bit. And I kind of feel bad about that, actually. Like, I've done something wrong. I've wronged Kiznaiver in some way. But on the whole, I'm glad I watched it. And this probably is not a show I would have kept up with if we weren't doing the podcast. Like, this is a show I probably would have watched one episode of and been like, not really my cup of tea, and not, and missed out, kind of. So I'm glad that I saw it. Sal?
I guess I enjoyed it overall. Like, if I were to compare it to one of, like, it doesn't have the emotional grip that, like, Anohana had, because that was another Okada show. But the situations were entertaining, and again, I'm always into that whole story of, like, people you wouldn't expect to become friends and end up becoming friends if the scenarios and the build-up's done right.
Right. Lexa?
Yeah, I think this is actually one of Mari Okada's most thought-provoking, at least for me, shows where I wouldn't say that it didn't hit me emotionally, because it did. But I related most with this story with the quote-unquote emotionless characters, Sonozaki and Agata in particular. So I just wound up doing a lot of thinking while I was watching the show. And I'll probably actually rewatch it to process it all again. I don't rewatch anime very often, so that's a pretty high mark in my book.
Yeah. Okay, so all in all, warts and all, we're certainly glad we watched it. Okay, so I guess...
to go with LB's last thing, like, it's basically a show I wouldn't mind rewatching down the road.
Yeah, I so rarely rewatch anything these days, I'm not even going to ask myself that question. I mean, it's possible I could rewatch it, but maybe because I'll start going through a phase of actually rewatching things, I have no idea, so...
And I will say that as a show by, like, Trigger's newcomers, like I said, they for their first, like, project where they were given the helm, like, I think they did fine.
Yeah, maybe they'll let them have some of the coffee.
And I can't wait to see what they'll do, what that side of Trigger will do in the future.
Quick little thing before we end this. Did you guys catch the Kiznaiver in the end of Luluco?
I want to say yes, but I can't specifically remember now. Like, what was it?
It just the little Gumby whatever the mascot thing. It shows up in the background.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
I think I vaguely remember there being some reference to Kiznaiver in Luluco, but I don't actually remember what it was. So.
I don't remember what was going on at that particular moment, but he shows up in the background doing something.
Okay. So the Kiznaiver isn't completely left out of the trigger, the greater Triggerverse.
Right. I guess. Well, we'll bring it up when we get to Luluco.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to something that hasn't ended. ReZero 13. I've noticed I'm not really excited when it's time to watch a new episode of ReZero. It's like, oh, it's ReZero, okay. But that said, I thought it was really interesting how this episode was very uncomfortable to watch because of Subaru messing up the situation so much, but, like, it's rare that something is that uncomfortable to watch, and it's not because they introduce some kind of quote-unquote dark or element or something like that. It was uncomfortable to watch because it was, like, intentionally awkward. And that's pretty rare, and I think it's pretty ballsy that they're doing that.
I was actually very surprised to see the logical conclusion of watching him fall apart in a kind of natural way for his situation. I was like, no, stop! I don't want to watch this.
Yeah, I
paused the episode and got up a couple times, walked away, came back. I think the episode took me like an hour and a half to watch total.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I can't think of a good parallel, but it's like one of those things where you're so embarrassed for Subaru, you almost feel personally embarrassed. Like,
it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't even entirely embarrassment. It was just feeling terrible. Like, no, don't do that. Stop.
And what I think is great about it is, even though you could see that Subaru was totally messing up the situation, on the other hand, you could sort of see where he was coming from, because after kind of going through, like, having to die over and over again, basically because he loves Amelia, and then when Amelia's asking him to kind of, like, be like, well, you know, what have you done for me lately? And he has to be like, I've done all this stuff for you, and I can't even tell you what it is. Like, you totally understand why he would fall apart and be feeling that way, yet at the same time totally cringe thinking about how it sounds from Amelia's perspective.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing that I feel like I'm not excited by ReZero, but yet a lot of the individual things it's doing are interesting to me.
I love ReZero. I definitely felt like I put this episode off to the last second, so I can't say that I was, like, whether or not I'm excited for it, I don't know. I love this. I love watching it, though. I love the show in general and find it very fascinating.
Yeah. What do you think Amelia's going to do now?
I don't know what's going to happen next. You know, I think the number one thing that caught me toward the end of the episode wasn't even where's this going to go with Amelia, but the fact that, you know, they put off the whole witch thing from the last arc, and I'm wondering how they're going to bring that back into things, because I mean that's basically what's stopping him from telling Amelia what's going on.
Well, they did bring that up in this episode, saying, "Oh, well, Amelia, it's a silver-haired half-elf. Can't trust them," you know. So they are keeping it in our minds.
And they also bring it. You know, he can't tell her about the revival powers and whatnot. He can't explain the situation. I'm still fairly certain that that's because there's some kind of witch or something possessing him, following him around, doing something to him. Yeah. And I'm very curious to see how that's going to come back.
Okay, well, what I meant when I asked you the question about Amelia, though, is that she says something to him at the end, like, okay, well, if I owe you this debt, I'll pay you back right away, and then you can, you know, go on your way or something. I'm wondering if she's just going to give him, like, a bag of coins and be like, be gone from my sight.
Oh, I think the implication there was that her paying him back was saying goodbye. Like, that just by being involved with her, she felt like she was draining him.
Maybe you're right. Maybe I was taking it too literally. Okay. So we will probably not be excited to see the next episode of ReZero and then be really, really emotionally involved once it starts. So go figure.
One more thing to say. Oh man, the scene with Felt, with her showing back up and her attitude toward the whole thing, the whole procession.
Yeah, you know, it was amazing how, like, this episode was full of things that were, like, intentionally cringeworthy. Just like
intentionally cringeworthy, and also like, and I'm not going to say anything about real politics, but I watched that and I'm like, wow, this actually reminds me of what's going on with real politics.
Yeah, like, this is ReZero. That should not feel like a salient point, and yet.
I actually feel like I'm getting involved with an epic fantasy, which anime does not usually pull off.
Yeah. Okay. I was tempted to say something that would actually get us into firmly political territory. Then I remembered I don't want to be an insane person, so let's talk about anime instead. Okay. Next on the list is Flying Witch 11 and 12, which is the one thing Lifesong didn't get a chance to watch this week, so I think we're going to discuss the end of that series next week. Honestly, it was kind of par for the course, Flying Witch, which was nice, but nothing that needs to be discussed, oh my god, right now. We can get to it next week. Twin Star Exorcist, yeah, I'm going to confess I dropped Twin Star Exorcist. I can't... Yeah.
I have two.
Okay, so we're gonna just cross that off the list. It's possible that maybe at some point it'll be worth going back, but just not enjoying it anymore. So, Okay, that brings us to Macross Delta, episode 13. Sal, how was this one?
Yeah, see, I enjoyed it overall, but I was kind of mixed because, like, on one note, there was some emotional moments, like, oh no, like Planet Ragna is getting messed up. Everyone has to evacuate. It's like, no. And then there were some neat dogfights and stuff in terms of how the story unfolded. But then there were some parts that it played a little bit too by the book in terms of like the original Macross with some of the tropes, such as Hayate and using Messer's ship after he got killed off a few episodes ago.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I don't recognize what that's a reference to.
Oh,
so.
I was saying I enjoyed it, but I was saying like that was like the by the book, because that also happened in the original series.
I'm not at all surprised to hear that it's by the book, because everything in this seems to be very by the book. I felt like it was a really strong episode, though.
Oh, yeah.
I do have one major complaint, and that is there's only a couple of good songs that they have for this Macross series, and they played the best one in the first few minutes. I mean, that's kind of like a musical act where they put the best musical act up front, and then nobody else wants to even hear the rest.
Because when you compare to the previous shows, like the other shows, even Frontier had like a very solid soundtrack with the vocal songs.
Frontier had amazing music, and then it's not that the music is bad, but they took the weakest songs we've had in the whole series, and those were like the key moment songs of this episode. I'm just kind of like, well, why didn't you just flip those? You use Giri Giri Eye as the, you know.
Oh yeah. Also, I was like very concerned for like the people of Ragna, like during that whole battle, and like how many of them are gonna survive. Also, the one girl who lived at their base, though.
Yeah, I think they might have killed her off. I hope they did. Well, I mean, her whole thing was that she was in love with Messer, so I guess they could have killed her off. That would.
I'm thinking, since those people do have gills, hopefully she just got washed away and she's just somewhere underwater.
Yeah, I was a little worried they were going to do the whole Death Star thing with the planet and just blow it up. But Ragna survived at least.
Yeah. They're just taken over by the Windmirians right now, so I guess that'll probably be maybe one of the final arcs. Though, come to think of it, there's a lot of stuff building up that they could do different with the story, like kind of showing the darker side of the current Galactic Union.
There's a lot of places they could go with it. And it seems like there's bad guys everywhere, and we just lost the main planet that we kind of fell in love with. That's kind of the strongest thing the show's had going for it. So yeah, no idea what they're going to do now.
And also, like, had I watched like more of Macross 7, I think that scene of seeing the Macross 7 take flight again would have been, I probably would have like teared over that, just like, oh my god, they're bringing it back.
Oh, what was that?
That would have been the first time they would have brought back a classic Macross ship and bring it back to action.
Did they do that in this episode?
Well, that was what they were evacuating in, was the Macross 7.
Oh, see, I don't know these things. You have to watch this show with an expert.
Well, I did tell you that the Macross in the city was the Macross 7, and that was the same one shown in the intro.
Tell me that, but I had forgotten that was... So that's how they were able to evacuate. They took the ship that they used to colonize, and they evacuated in the colonization ship. Got it. Neat.
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of cool, because that was the first time they actually did that.
Yeah, that was the new unique thing for Macross. Here.
I mean, the last time they brought up a classic Macross was in Plus, where the original Macross kind of ended up being used as a weapon of destruction by the computerized idol. That was like that ended up being like the final obstacle in that series, in that OVA.
Yeah, I kind of just want to download all of the Macross data into my head so that I know it's there, just so I can fully appreciate what I'm watching.
Yes. So yeah, I'm looking forward to like what direction they're gonna go with the second half of the show.
Yep.
Okay, so we're good on Macross for the week?
Yes. Yep. We're all Macrossed out.
Yeah, and I hope that girl who you were saying you hoped she wasn't dead, I hope she's not dead, too. I don't know who she is, but I hope she's not dead. Okay, and that brings us to the last show in our Senpai League for this week, and You Thought There Was Never a Girl Online, episode 12, the finale. And I was actually a couple of episodes behind on the show. I caught up today. And I like the final arc. I like the way they ended it. The big thing I feel like I need to think on is I'm not sure if I'm completely satisfied with how they dealt with Akko's character. Like, there was obviously character growth in that she realized she was being too passive and she was starting to regret it. She needed to be more active, but they kind of didn't address I feel like I don't know if they really addressed what her underlying problem was the whole time before that. So as much as I liked it,
what would you say her underlying problem was? Because I have a pretty strong opinion on that myself.
Okay, I thought her underlying problem was it wasn't what everybody said it was, and she can't tell the difference between the game and reality, because she clearly can.
Yeah, she clearly can.
The problem is, the stuff in real life, other than being with Rushian, had very little value to her.
Right.
And it seemed like by the end that was still true, except she decided that she was going to be a little bit more. She was going to try to be more active in things, but it was her lack of being active in the game that made her feel that way. It wasn't her lack of being active in life that made her feel that way.
Well, it was. And I think the ending conclusion was that, and I kind of related even because, well, I'll go ahead and say it. They had the whole cultural festival going on, and they're dragging her out to that, and she gets that sense of, I've accomplished something, I'm doing something I care about in the game, where she really wasn't even, she was having fun in the game world, and she was taking the game world seriously. That was what she valued. Well, it's what she valued, but she wasn't taking anything particularly serious, I guess. She wasn't struggling toward anything. She was just kind of, rolling with it. It was the thing that, it was a comfort thing. And I think there was some growth there, and she really cared about losing. She really wanted to win. And does that apply back to her real life? I mean, the only thing they show is that she's following them around at the cultural festival and doing the maid cafe and participating in school as opposed to not participating. But I felt like that was a good way to show at least some growth.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm probably nitpicking and doing the whole, well, if you see a gun in the first act, it's got to go off in the third act. Like, she grew, but she didn't grow in exactly the way I was anticipating. Therefore, it's not good. I don't want to be that person. But
I will say for this show, I feel like it actually has a fairly realistic edge to it. Like, I think if her character growth had gone too much further than it did, it wouldn't have fit. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah,
it's almost like if Akko had gotten the character growth I wanted, perhaps it would have felt kind of forced and unrealistic. I don't know.
I mean, I'm watching the same things that happened to Akko, and I kind of went through a similar phase in my life, and it took years to go through that phase. It didn't happen in the span that they had in the anime, so.
Yeah. All right, LB, I know you weren't as keen on this last ending arc as Lifesong and I are, so what did you think of the last episode?
Okay, so I do need to throw out a couple of caveats before I say, my overall opinion. I'm not saying that I hated the last arc. The last arc was fine. I did enjoy watching it. It was good. I didn't enjoy it as much as you guys, but, I wasn't sitting there white-knuckling my way through the last few episodes, trying desperately to keep my eyes open while it was playing out. It was good. It was fine. But I still have to stand by my opinion that the series peaked with the wedding scene. And I think that in the future, unless I'm showing this show to someone for the first time and they, and I'm watching it with them, if I rewatch this series in the future, which I think that there's a very good chance that I will, because I enjoyed it quite a bit, I think that if I'm watching it just by myself, I'll get to the wedding scene and I'll probably just stop there, because I do think that was the high watermark.
Mm. Okay, so I guess you didn't find Akko's character growth that compelling either way, or else you would want to watch the whole thing again.
Yeah, well, I thought that it was a little more interesting in the first, 8 episodes or so when they were developing the relationships between all of the characters. I thought Akko's, I do feel that, in the last, 4 episodes or so, give or take, that they were spending more time focusing on her and, getting through her character growth and making sure that, that it can... And, I admit that it might be just my opinion, and I'm totally okay with that. It felt kind of like it felt like the tone of the series changed just enough that didn't feel like quite the same show because they were focusing more on, it's like, okay, we've spent all this time developing the relationships. Now we need to focus on Akko because we haven't been doing that enough. So it's like, okay, now, but again, that just might be my opinion, and I'm okay with that.
I'd actually say that they focus quite a bit on the guild aspect and the team aspect of it. I mean, Akko is obviously an important part of that, but you also have like the growth of it. And I can't remember her name as anything other than Schwein.
That's fine. We can. Yeah, well, I mean, we call him Rushian all the time.
Right. So you have Schwein at school, and she's being she's being openly friendly with Rushian, and that's a thing they brought up several times throughout the arc, where she had a really big struggle with that early on. She like being open about the fact that she enjoys playing these games, or even that she's friends with this nerdy guy.
Yeah, I really like the moment at the end where she gives him the pork, whatever it is, pork sausage or something.
Right.
Well, symbolically also, it's kind of like they're saying, oh, well, the game and reality are different. We're friends in the game, not in real life. And then what does she do? She nourishes him, the thing that he needs to live. So.
Right. Right. Yeah. What they say in this, it's a fun show in that what they say is actually very different than what's going on. I think that was a neat thing they did throughout the show.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, one more thing I want to say about Netoge before we say goodbye to it for this season. I kept wondering, what is the deal with Nekohime-san and her like, mountain of admirers? Because, okay, yeah, she's a cute cat girl, but, like, every girl in that game is cute. Why are they all so devoted to her? What has she done?
Hello, cat girl.
I don't know why it's a thing in anime, but there are people like that. Like, the whole club thing in anime has happened since the beginning of when I've watched anime. There's a weird school club of admirers for someone. I have actually seen people like that in MMOs. There was one guild member of mine who she always had like 20 or so people that would just do anything she asked.
Wow. And
I was always, wow, that's crazy. There really are those kind of players in MMOs. They have this, like, social clique where there's this one person that's kind of their idol, almost.
Wow. Okay, well, this is why I needed you to be my MMO senpai to explain this to me. Okay, that concludes our senpai league. Is there anything either of you would like to say about Netoge before we leave it behind?
Just like with a couple of other shows this season, if you had told me 12 weeks ago that this show was going to be one of the better shows of the season, I probably would have looked at you like you had the worst taste and your opinion meant absolutely nothing anymore. But now that I've gotten through it, it's like, wow, that was so much better than that premise or title ever would have led me to believe, like, ever at any point in my life. And I'm really glad that I watched it.
Yeah, LB, that imitation of you from 12 weeks ago, that was mean. I don't think I would have liked that, LB. Life?
I'm glad to see. I'll just say one thing is that I'm glad to see that there's really a lot of different things they can do with these trapped in an MMO type. Well, not trapped in this case, but MMO type stories. Like, they're getting creative with these. They're not the same thing. This is definitely not Sword Art Online. This is definitely not
Log Horizon.
It's not Log Horizon. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of taking over fantasy anime in a sense, in that there's more of this than there is other fantasy anime sometimes in some seasons. But I really like the way that they always seem to bring something creative to it.
Yeah, it's like, there's a part of me that's like, fantasy fan that wants to be like, no, don't take over my fantasy with video game anime, but I can't really say it bothers me. At least not yet. I don't have a problem with it.
And the positive part is that we're seeing the return of the fantasy setting after a while.
Yeah,
so
you know,
that's always good.
I think we are actually getting more fantasy anime because of it. Like, there are a couple others I could name for the last couple of years that have been really good too. They're not as popular as the video game stuff, but they're happening, and for a while they weren't happening. So
considering that there used to be a lot of fantasy animes in the 90s, so I'm happy to see them return, even if they did like the MMO.
I can't say this with real authority, but I feel like there weren't that many in like when I first started watching anime, and then there's like a lot in the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's an interesting trend to keep an eye on. Okay, so we're done with our Senpai League. We're going to take a little break and then come back with our nice and short Kohai League. Relatively short. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome back to our Kohai League, and we have a lot of series ending this week, starting with High School Fleet episode 12. And I was actually kind of bored with this episode. I was thinking, okay, they're going to have a naval battle. Mike is going to do something creative that takes everybody by surprise. She's going to save Mocha. No one's actually going to die. No one's actually going to be hurt. And then, of course, all those things happen. And I feel like the series overall has like wanted to have its cake and eat it too. Like, it wants to do really, really silly things that completely diffuse all tension, but it also wants to have these like tense naval battles. And maybe it worked for a little while, but it stopped working a long time ago. There was no doubt in my mind that everybody was going to come out of this fine. And then when they finally sacrificed the Harukaze at the very end, I was like, yawn. I don't care. But I mean, I did think it was cool the way they banged the ships together, just viscerally how that felt. But on the whole, I think the show had kind of worn out its welcome for me by this point. What about you, Lifesong?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. It's one of those shows where I wouldn't really give it a high mark, but I enjoyed it. I got through it. I felt like the climax did everything it could have done. I also kind of felt like it was. I wouldn't want to keep watching. I mean, if it were to go longer, I would be done with it.
Quick question: did it actually end with them fighting an army of chinchillas, or did they already wipe out the chinchillas?
They figured out how to counter the chinchillas. They created an antidote for them, and they stopped being important. No, instead, if you remember, I predicted exactly what happened in this episode a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, you said no one's going to die, but they're going to sacrifice the ship, because that's the one character they can kill.
I also said the Germans are going to come back and save the day. Both of those things happened. Exactly on cue. Like, it was impossible. There's no way they could have been there, but they were there.
In fairness, I like this version of World War II better.
Right, exactly.
Let all future world wars follow this model and be all happy and shiny with German food festivals.
I think the thing that made it the most fun for me was sitting down at the last episode and talking to my buddy who is my submariner buddy. He's in the military who's come back, and another friend of mine who's in the military. We were just talking about the different tactics and stuff that were used in the different episodes, and just kind of appreciating how much detail and work they put into actually the situations. I mean, like, sure, no one ever gets hurt, nothing serious ever happens, but they put a lot of thought into the actual world building behind the world. That's just kind of I only really even see it in retrospect. It's not even all that important because the show's serious aspect didn't work as well as it could have. But I don't know. Yeah. It's something I appreciate.
Yeah, I appreciate that too, and it kind of makes me wish that the show had just decided to pick a style and kind of stick with it, because it's not like naval battles handled fairly realistically or something you see a lot of in anime. So there are probably a fair amount of people watching the show, including people in the actual Navy, who are like, wow, this is cool, but why is her cat peeing on the bridge? It's like, I wish they'd taken it seriously.
Yeah, like we had a good conversation with one of my buddies about the whole how they turn the ship with the what is it called, a parachute.
Yeah,
and just how that would, we're considering that and we're thinking about that. You're like, wait, you could actually do that.
Yeah, so our review of High School Fleet is it's 50% more entertaining if you watch it with someone who's actually in the Navy.
Probably.
Okay, so I don't regret watching it, but I probably could have done without it too, except for that one genius episode where they're like, we have no toilet paper, Yeah, if you haven't watched High School Fleet, just watch episode 4. You don't need any context or anything. It's probably better that way. Okay. Alright, so we ready to move on to Anne Happy?
Yep.
Okay. Aunt Happy actually did the opposite of what you wanted. Because I remember you said a couple weeks ago that you wanted some admission from Hanako, or Anne, whatever you want to call her, that she knows she's not lucky. And she actually said at the end of this episode, like, I'm so lucky, or something like that. So I was like, oh, is Lifesong cringing somewhere?
No, actually, I liked it. I still think she knows. I think the reason she says it all the time is that she knows, and that she doesn't see it that way. That's just she understands it's different than that. But her perspective is, I'm choosing to appreciate that we're doing this the way we're doing it. Yeah. I don't know. I really liked it.
Yeah, actually, I don't even specifically remember that much about how Aunt Happy ended. I just remember being, like, feeling vaguely warm and fuzzy inside, and being like, okay.
They had talked a couple episodes ago about how all the things they wanted to do for their summer break. And at the very end, the closing moment, you've got Anne talking about how they actually did all those things.
Yeah.
And that's why she says, how lucky they are. They got to do all those things. It was part of the school activities.
Yeah. I think it's pretty obvious if you've been listening to this podcast that both of us enjoyed the show, but I feel like I've kind of said everything I probably have to say about it by this point, and I'm just glad it was made.
Yeah, one of the criticisms I could give to it is that you kind of get everything you're going to get out of Anne Happy in a couple episodes. Although I would say that the later episodes are better than the earlier episodes. I think that I liked them more. It's not like they do that much to explore different angles. It's really different. Well, they do. They explore the same perspective or the same thing from a whole bunch of different. I don't even know if perspective is the right word. There's a lot of the same thing in the show, but it's still good. It works, even without really expanding.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought some episodes were stronger than others, but. Well, I don't know. I'm sitting here wondering how many comedy anime can you make the accusation you're really getting everything you're going to get out of it from a few episodes? Because that's pretty much true of Sakamoto. That's pretty much true of Tanaka-kun. I mean, is that even a fair criticism of a comedy anime?
You know what? I think you're right. I think you're good. You're right to point that out. Maybe it's not. Maybe I just wanted more out of Anne Happy, and it's unfair.
Yeah.
I think the important question is: did Anne Happy make you laugh every week?
Oh yeah, it always made me laugh. I loved it. I think it was really good. I wouldn't say it was like one of the better. I wouldn't even say it was the best comedy of the season, but it was good. The season was full of good comedy. So it's almost hard to say what the best of the season would be, because there was a lot of good comedy this season. But.
Yeah, I'm actually having a difficult time nailing down anything as the best of anything this season. Not because it wasn't good, but just because I don't really know what I want to pick for things.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to move on to Sakamoto 11, which actually did not end this week. There's going to be a conclusion, Sakamoto 12, next week, where there's going to be some kind of action is going to go on, because one of our friendly neighborhood delinquents has been convinced that Sakamoto was a problem that needs to be remedied, and could be some drama there, maybe with somebody hitting him over the head with a baseball bat or something. I mean, of course, it's Sakamoto, so that's probably not going to happen. Like, the baseball bat is probably going to, like, dematerialize and become a puppy or something, but, there's going to be some action. But I think we really don't want to talk about the episode of Sakamoto so much as we want to talk about LB and his burgeoning relationship with a certain young schoolboy.
So, since Karen spent the income of a small European country last week on her date...
Ouch!
And thus we've officially determined that, you know what, screw money, we can do whatever the hell we want on these dates. I have one that will top last week without any question or any doubt, and will declare me the ultimate victor.
Do you go to the moon?
Not yet.
Okay.
But it's funny that you mentioned that, because my wife and I were actually talking about that earlier, because I was mentioning that, yeah, I've got, a date in mind to beat Karen's, and she was like, oh gods, at this point you two just might as well go on like a cruise to Mars.
Alright, so let's hear about this date that definitely tops my date. I'm skeptical,
So, alright, he comes to my house, he picks me up in a beautiful blue convertible, because red convertibles are cliche.
They are.
It is a blue convertible. That's important to note. Not for any particular reason, just because I like blue. Anyways. But he picks me up, and we're driving along, and, you know, there's some nice music playing on the radio, nothing overly flashy, but I notice that he's not saying anything. And I get curious, and I ask him, you know, why are you so quiet? Is everything all right? And he continues to just not say anything. He just focuses on the road and drives us to our destination, which happens to be a small airport near my house, where there is a small private plane waiting for us.
Oh, no fair.
Hey, you started it.
Okay.
So, small private plane waiting for us. We get on the plane, and since he's underage, he has sparkling cider, but I have top-notch champagne. We fly for a few, for, you know, 2 or 3 hours down to Los Angeles, where a limo is waiting to pick us up. We drive to Hollywood, where we drive up, and there are photographers waiting for us because we are taking in the latest Hollywood premiere. We get the full red carpet treatment. Photographers are flashing their bulbs, but I notice that Sakamoto is covering his face a little bit, and I ask him why, and he goes, because really, this night is about you, and I don't want anyone focusing their attention on me. So but we still get the full red carpet treatment. We take in the movie, and it's a good, nice drama. Nothing too flashy, nothing too good. But at the sad climax of the movie, I look over and I notice a single tear has rolled down his cheek.
Nice.
So after the movie, we get back into the limo, and I ask him, are we headed back to the airport? Yeah, I mean, because there's not really much else you can do to top that. And he goes, oh, really? So we drive over to the Hollywood Bowl, where we walk up, and I notice that it's empty. It's just, there's nothing there. The only person there is a single ticket taker who sees us approaching, opens the gate, and with a knowing nod, just lets us in. We go in, and in the center of the Hollywood Bowl, I am guided to a table where all my favorite sushi is lined up on a platter. We're talking tamago and salmon and tuna and shrimp and just all my favorites just right there on a platter. Everything that I could want. But then I notice after I sit down that Sakamoto isn't there with me, and I get a little worried. But then I look up and realize that the reason why he's not with me is because he has taken the stage and he treats me to a private concert of him singing all of favorite songs of both English and Japanese. So I sit there, I eat my sushi in the private Hollywood Bowl performance that he is performing for me until the stars and moon are shining brightly above us. And he continues to serenade me all through the night. The end.
Okay, well, I will admit that was impressive, but I'm going to go to the moon next week, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. Although I have to confess, when you said you were going to LA, I thought, oh my god, are he and Sakamoto going to eat dinner at Hell's Kitchen? Because that would be amazing. And then I was kind of sad that didn't happen. Well, he definitely racked up some expenses there. So.
Yeah, I think that at this point you guys are trying to outspend each other. That's what it seems to me.
No,
I kept the budget for my first date very reasonable, very realistic. The most he spent was like a dozen roses and an outfit for me. Then Karen went and spent a few $1,000s, and it was like, oh, hell no.
You know what? Maybe we need to enter a new era of the Sakamoto date where we go back to basics.
Yeah, maybe. Set some ground rules that we need to abide by.
Because I imagine episode 12 will be the final showdown.
Oh, but that's just the beginning. I don't know.
Oh,
maybe.
so it's still going to go even in the summer season. Okay, I thought it was going to be a spring thing.
You know what? There'll be one show in summer that really disappoints us. So then, without mentioning what we're doing, when we get to that part of the outline we're supposed to talk about the show, we'll just start going back to dates with Sakamoto, and we won't even mention that there's been any kind of discrepancy. Okay, so listeners, that's your cue. When you hear us talking about dates with Sakamoto, you know we think a show is bad and we don't want to talk about it anymore. Alright. Okay, Elby, that was very impressively romantic. I don't know if it was better than my date, but I think we're on a par at this point. So, we'll have to see if there's any going forward from here.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens with the final episode next week.
Yep. Oh, that's right. The actual show still exists. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's become kind of besides the point, really. All right. Moving on to another comedy. Tanaka-kun is always listless. Episode 12. It's funny. I watched this episode earlier today, and I actually don't remember it very well. I remember I liked it because I always liked Tanaka-kun, but I think I was pretty much ready for the show to be over. Also, just because. I don't want to say it had worn out its welcome because it's too negative, but I think 12 episodes was about the right length for it. What do you think, Lifestone?
Yeah, I agree. It was the episode with Shiraishi kind of doing her I'm in love with Tanaka-kun and all of the ways that doesn't work out. And it was, I don't know, it was a cute way to end the series out.
Yeah, well, I like when he gives her that speech, which is like the opposite of what most characters would say in a situation, which is like, well, it doesn't really matter if things aren't going right. Life is long. It'll work out eventually.
Yeah, and it's just the most Tanaka-kun thing ever.
And then she's like, that is horrible. No one would buy that.
But then she's sitting there charmed by it nonetheless.
Yeah, strangely, that does not put her off wanting to date him. She's just like, I can't believe I'm into this guy, but I am.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but I loved the scene where she gets dragged off by Miyano, who is sympathizing with her for being rejected or feeling rejected, and she's like, "Oh right, this version of me has been rejected by Tanaka-kun."
Yeah.
Not sure how I should feel about this.
Yeah. Tanaka-kun, I feel like having difficulty coming up with how to sum it up. It's kind of like it's a comedy I'd really recommend. But I don't think you could watch a lot of it at once. Like, I think if I tried to, like, shotgun Tanaka-kun after 2 or 3 episodes, I would just take a nap, you know?
Yeah, so. I wouldn't be able to marathon it. But, maybe that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
That's kind of how the show is. You're supposed to be laid back. It would almost defeat the purpose to try and marathon it.
Yeah, that's true. Although, you know what, whenever people say that fiction makes people do bad things, ooh, fiction is evil, I'm kind of like roll my eyes at that. But I swear to God, when I watch Tanaka-kun, I get lazy. So, maybe there is something to that.
There is. There absolutely is something to that. But it's while you're watching it, right?
I think after I'm watching it, too. I'm like, oh, I was going to do that thing, but nah.
Okay.
So maybe only Tanaka-kun is an evil influence on the youth, and every other piece of fiction is totally okay.
Oh man, that's a funny thought.
Okay, so we're going to move on to Cerberus episode 13, and I messed up with this show, because I didn't enjoy 13 very much, but it was entirely my own fault and not the show's, because I watched Mother's Rosario, like, literally right before I watched Cerberus 13.
That's not fair.
Yeah, I watched all of it. I watched all 5 episodes. And I was like, I'll watch one more thing. I'll watch, Cerberus 13. That's a good idea. And then of course, Cerberus is trying to get some emotion out of me, and I'm like, I'm spent, dude.
Yeah, that's like, there's a couple of shows, like Anohana, the end of Mother's Rosario. You don't go from those into something else. You're numb.
Yeah, and then I felt bad. I felt actually mad at myself for, like, betraying Cerberus. It was like, it was bad of you to even try to do that. So, but to actually talk about the show, I mean, I had said a couple of weeks ago that I was wondering if Serato was Dagonzat's soul, and it turns out, no, she's made from, like, his blood, like a crystal of his blood or something like that. And I don't want to say I was hugely disappointed with that, but I thought it would have been cooler if she was actually his soul. So the fact that it turned out in the end that, yes, Dagonzat is an evil dragon, ooh. I was kind of hoping at the end it would turn out Serato was his soul, and his soul was actually this very, like, plucky, happy girl. Because that just would have been really fun. But
I guess they could have gone there. I really like what they did with it, though. Where he gives her his heart. That's how he beats the dragon. Spoilers.
Yeah, that was. I don't know how to put her into words. I want to say that's cute, but I don't know. Giving someone else your heart is maybe not cute. I don't know quite how to put it.
It was this warm, fuzzy thing. I don't know how to better put it.
Yeah. But when he gave her his heart and then the dragon disappears, I was like, wait a minute, so you can just take the heart out of the dragon and give it to someone who doesn't have one, and now the dragon doesn't have hearts, so he disappears. Does that work? There seems like there should be a logical pitfall in there somewhere.
Well, he was going to take the heart for himself, and then I guess that would have magically transferred Dagonzot's heart back, and,
Yeah, what would that have accomplished? He'd be like, okay, I just gave the dragon his incredibly powerful heart back. Good, now we have to fight it.
I guess then they would have had to try and kill him.
Yeah, that would have been a horrible idea.
Yeah, that would have been really bad. So it was really good that his concern there was Serato and not the dragon.
Yeah.
Which was, I think that's worth noting too, because the whole series is I gotta kill the dragon. He's worried about saving Serato at the end of the show.
Yeah, and the only death comes about trying to save Serato too. Well, Dagonzot dies, but it's not really the same.
Yeah, her parent figure died too, but
that's what I meant. The only death was her parent.
Oh, okay, gotcha. And then of course there's what's her name, and her little scene at the end.
Mumu, I think.
Oh no, I wasn't talking about the shop girl.
Erin?
Not Erin either.
Sharon. Oh yeah,
right.
that bit at the end was like, well, you're actually very sexy now. And she's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, she got the sexy upgrade, so it's all good.
Yeah, we were thinking it was going to be like a Full Metal Alchemist thing, and she was going to become like this sad, tortured creature. It's like, no, I'm hot now.
I just that moment where she's like, "Yep, I'm 300 years old and I'm hot." Okay, I guess I can move on. I was just okay. I think I laughed at that scene for a good minute. I don't know. It was just it was probably her best scene in the whole stinking show. I don't know what purpose she didn't even need to be in the show. She didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, I really didn't. She was the weakest link in the whole show, but the fact that they gave her a send off like that makes me like her a little more.
Yeah.
So, the only thing that I'm gonna kind of criticize Cerberus for is there was a lot of parts where after Nambuko merged with the dragon, he kind of did the whole oh, this is the wonderful power of evil. I feel so great that I am powerful and evil. Yay! And he kind of did that for a while, and yeah, that's very typical. And if I'm gonna pick on Cerberus for that, a lot of anime are gonna go down for that. But especially after watching Mother's Rosario, I was just kind of I don't have the patience for this schlock right now.
Yeah, I mean, it was what it was. It's one of those shows that's I think I said this on Twitter too. It's I don't know that I can recommend this to anyone, but I really liked it anyway.
Yeah. Maybe 10 years from now, we'll be like, so, have we come to an opinion about whether or not Cerberus was actually good or we just liked it? So.
Yeah.
Alright. So, Cerberus, we are sad to say goodbye to you, but it's probably just as well because you're confusing. We don't know whether we should like you or not. Okay. So that brings us to our Chibi League, Tonkatsu DJ Agetarou 12, which I thought had a pretty strong ending. I liked them having the big party in the snow, even though the whole send-off at the end with the snow was the color of lard. Be like, well, yes, snow is white. I don't know what you're getting at, but it was still pretty fun and kind of heartwarming, I thought. Sal?
Yeah, pretty much, man. I think the cool part was just the kind of intense build of okay, are these people gonna make it? There's this whole snowstorm and just all the little convenient stuff that just happened to get everyone to meet up for this awesome DJ party so that Oily could get the recognition he deserves.
Yeah, the best is when the Korean DJ calls from the top of the truck and the guy driving the truck is like, "Get off my truck!"
Yeah, he's like, "What are you doing up there?"
Oh yeah, and then the fact there's that subtitle saying "one man against the world,"
and then he's just kind of like, I'm from Seoul, Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was amazing. Let's see. And glad to see they also brought it back to food of Agetarou, kind of preparing the pork soup to keep everyone warm.
I love the fact that joke just... It's not even a joke, it's the theme that's woven throughout the whole story. It's this worked because of that Tonkatsu. If it was just DJ Agetarou, I would have been bored at episode 3.
Yeah, it would have been whatever, but because of the food X DJ analogy, it's this is brilliant.
Yeah, and because, I think this show kind of had what Pande Peace was lacking, and it just had, even though it had more than one joke, it had one consistent thing you were kind of looking for in each episode, and it always delivered. You always got it. So it made you happy. So, yeah, I mean, I guess... Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go on, Karen, I interrupted you. Finish.
I think I was just going to say that I would recommend this show, even though I'm kind of surprised at myself that I would, but I I think
Yeah,
I would have
I would
to.
too.
I would have to kind of explain that. Okay, I like Tonkatsu DJ Agetarou, but this is not typical. This is a little weird. I would have to.
It is a weird show.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like, I have a couple of friends that specifically love weird anime, and the first thing I'm going to tell them about when they ask me for anime recommendation the next time I talk to them will be Tonkatsu DJ Agetarou.
Yeah, and this is a small thing, but I like the fact that at the end it really wasn't about DJ Agetarou becoming famous or becoming the most famous successful DJ. It was about him becoming friends with the other DJs and becoming part of that whole part of that whole culture.
Just joining the DJing community and circle.
Yeah, because for some reason from the beginning I thought it was going to be, the quests of him becoming like the world's top DJ or something, and it wasn't that at all. And
I'm glad it didn't care.
Yeah, he just wanted to be a DJ with his own style. That was it.
Yeah.
I was a little worried toward the end that it was going to go there, and then it was like, okay, now that I'm cool, it's time to make my mentor get him some spotlight. And yeah, it was good. It was a good way to end it out.
In a sense, it's kind of realistic too how you pursue a field. Like, you want to do this because you enjoy it and you want to make a living out of it, and you learn from the other people who are already in.
That's not really how my career went, or has gone so far. But I wish it was more like Tonkatsu DJ Agetarou.
You haven't cooked enough tonkatsu.
Clearly, that's my problem. That's been my problem the whole time. All right, so we're gonna move on to Space Patrol Luluco episode 13, the end, and I found this ending very, very satisfying. And I was wondering the last time we talked about Luluco, how is this show so satisfying when it's just a short? And I don't know how they pulled it off, but they did, and it's just incredibly fulfilling. And God, what even happens in this? I think I'm getting confused trying to remember what happened in 12 versus 13. All right, this episode is the one where she and Nova actually team up to beat up Black Hole Guy, right?
And along with like the touch of heartwarming moment of the sad and heartwarming moments towards the end.
Yeah, it's so sad that Nova finally gains like a soul and then he dies like 5 minutes later. But he's out there in the multiverse somewhere.
Well, he's not dead. He's in a different universe.
Yeah, okay, he's kind of sort of dead, but not really. And just and apparently I didn't know this, but I didn't even know there was like a Trigger mascot to begin with, and that was how, and this was her. I mean, I think it was a surprise that Luluco ended up being Trigger-chan or whatever she is, but
yeah,
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Basically, that anime was like the origin story of Trigger-chan and why she exists.
Really? I didn't even know that was a thing either. I've learned something.
I think it was like, I forgot when they came up with her, but I think like they posted like an artwork of her like at one point, like this is the mascot of Trigger.
Well, I think people probably...
Yeah, now I have to wonder if it was serious or if it was just a joke. And then they're like,
also,
hey,
did y'all notice the part of the Trigger logo when Luluco finished off the Black Holians leader?
I want to say yes, but I'm not sure I'm thinking of the right thing.
Basically, the G and the Trigger logo. Like, there was like half of it in there when she was like firing off Nova.
I want to say I noticed that subconsciously, because I feel like saying yes, but I can't specifically remember it. I think what people didn't realize she was Trigger-chan because she had the brown hair, but then it's like once she rejects wanting to be quote-unquote normal, she gets her mother's red hair, and that's when she truly becomes Trigger-chan. So, and that moment at the end when she like high-fives the Little Witch Academia character, I don't know why, it was such a small thing, but when I saw that I was like, I am a Trigger fangirl for life, that was so awesome.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Just like building up to the next show.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, they said that too, right? See you next Trigger show, and then immediately after that they announced.
And I don't know if this was if it was referencing this, but I think that whole scene was referencing like how the Super Sentai franchise would build up to the next show. Because at the end of every series, they would have the previous Red Ranger meet up with the one that's gonna take his place, and they both like do like a high five or handshake, and then they just walk their separate paths.
Oh, see, I didn't know that was specifically a Sentai thing. Like, now that you say that, it's like, oh, of course they would do that.
So I'm kind of wondering, maybe that's where Trigger got the idea of doing that.
Probably.
Well, they've gotten lots of other ideas from that, so, I mean, it seems likely.
Yeah, I wonder, though. Well, actually, I've been talking too much. Life, is there anything you want to say about Luluco that we haven't covered yet?
Oh, nothing else.
Okay. This may be a weird question, but I was sitting here wondering, I feel like Space Patrol Luluco took a lot of things that I liked about Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill and all of Imaishi's stuff and kind of like crystallized it to its quintessence and gave it to you in these little 7-minute doses. Does Space Patrol Luluco make all the other trigger stuff kind of unnecessary? Because you get this in, like, we now have, like, the pure trigger heroine. We don't need like, the cut trigger heroine.
I actually feel like, and this is probably not a popular opinion, but I feel like a lot of their previous stuff would have been better if it was shorter. And I've actually said that about Gurren Lagann before, that there's a lot of padding. Well, I don't know if padding's the right word. There's a lot of just... I love the great moments of the show, but there's a lot of scenes that are just like, if they'd have cut them out entirely, it would not have hurt my feeling.
Yeah, because now that I've seen Luluco, and I think about it, it's like, yeah, I really liked Kill la Kill, but could they have fit that in 12 episodes? Yeah, they probably could have.
They probably could have.
Yeah. So, it's nice. It's like we got what we like about Trigger without all the meandering they sometimes do because they refuse to plan anything. So.
Well, I think they refuse to plan anything here, too. It just works better because it's shorter, I guess.
Yeah. Just, maybe it was a happy accident, but, we're happy we got to see it.
And also, like, props to Trigger for having 2 shows airing at the same time that actually had animation.
That's true.
That's like a first for them.
That's such a mean thing to say, but yeah.
But I don't think Sal means it in a mean way at all.
I mean, in a positive way. Like, it just shows that they're improving, that, studios are giving them a better budget for them to work with.
Yeah, I think Kiznaiver's not actually selling all that well, so I hope this happens again.
Yeah. Well, I think... I don't know, I could be wrong, but I've gotten the impression Luluco is a big hit. So maybe Luluco will kind of subsidize Kiznaiver. Yeah. All right. Okay, so we've bid a fond farewell to Luluco and move on to...
Okay, one more thing. I think the thing that made it more emotional, again, is going back to the Nova and Luluco moments. Like...
Oh,
just
yeah,
the
definitely.
timing how they were presented. It's like you felt something every week, and then that feeling just kept growing and growing and growing, and you just cared about the whole thing.
I still want to slap them for their lack of planning with that one line earlier in the series, but yes, I agree.
Do you think we're the only ones who noticed that? Because I haven't seen anyone else reference that.
I haven't seen anyone else reference it. I don't know. We might be the only ones who really are annoyed by it.
Okay. Sal?
Oh, what?
Do you think Luluco will find Nova?
I don't know. See, the thing is, let's see. In season 5, episode 1 was the last episode, and she did say to be continued. So maybe there'll be a Luluco season 2 down the road. Who knows?
See, I don't know if I want that. I think I may want the perfect Luluco season 2 that exists in my mind. I don't know. It's almost like maybe they have nowhere to go but downhill because I liked it so much.
Or maybe it could just be a special, like a one-shot thing.
Yeah, maybe every 5 years they'll do like a new Luluco animation, and I'll be happy. I think I would like that. Okay, so we're gonna move on now to, and it's sad that we're ending with Pande Peace after coming down from the high that was Space Patrol Luluco, but I don't know why I kept deluding myself thinking the show was going to become more like Yakitate Japan if I just stuck it out. I think I knew by episode 3 there was no chance in hell of any of that happening, and yet I kept saying that there was possibility something like that might happen. I guess denial is just a powerful force. Yeah, episode 13 happened. I believe they had a sleepover. I don't remember anything that happened. I guess maybe they ate bread. Life, you got anything?
Yeah, they all kind of bonded at the end.
And basically,
they pushed their beds together, and they were all, let's all be friends, yay.
And bread is the key to world peace.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we are one step closer to world peace.
Yeah, there is that joke that needs to be made. We've had all these shows that were trying to figure out world peace this season, and then Panda Peace was all, right, bread. There you go. Here's your answer. Done.
Oh god, Sonozaki just wakes up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night, and Agata's lying next to her in bed, like, what's the matter, dear? What's the matter, honey? And she's like, bread! The secret has been bread all along!
Oh my god.
And she just starts furiously baking. If there's not a dojin with this story, I am going to be upset.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. We'd be the ones who would even get the reference, because I don't think anyone watched Panda Peace, but it would be great.
No, there's one guy, I don't want to name names because I don't know if he'd even want to be named, but there is one guy on Twitter who I follow who said the Panda Peace is actually his favorite of the season. I don't know if that means he likes Panda Peace that much, or if that's just kind of like a backhanded insult to
Yeah, he might
else.
just hate the season.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know, I guess Panda Peace is kind of how, like, you can make a show into something in your mind, even if if the actual show offers pretty much nothing you want. You can just make it pretend that it's going to happen sometimes. So I'd like to say I've learned my lesson, but I totally haven't. All right. So I don't recommend Pande Peace, but I can't say I regret watching it, because if we hadn't watched it, we wouldn't have had Sal's epic meltdown about melon bread. So
yeah, pretty much.
So it was
was
worth
only
it.
3 minutes. It wasn't like we were wasting that much time.
Yeah, that's another reason why I can't say I regret watching it. Like, I've seen a couple of these shorts now that are 3 minutes long, and even the bad ones, it's like, if I got a laugh out of it at all, I feel like it was worth it. So.
Right.
I mean, it's like it takes 3 minutes to listen to a song, so why not?
Yeah. Okay, I think we're done with all our leads for this week. Now, I think when we record next week, I think the very beginning of the summer season will have started, right?
Mm-hmm. We're less than a week away from Food Wars Season 2.
Woohoo! Yay! Wait, have they announced who's getting that?
Crunchyroll.
Okay, if Crunchyroll has it, then why didn't they announce it during their big rollout thing?
I don't know, but Crunchyroll
I think it was a preemptive launch. That's why, like, people already knew they were getting it.
Oh, maybe I was just behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, but they've been putting up posts on their Facebook feeds like 5 days to Food Wars, 4 days to Food Wars.
Oh, is that soon?
Something like that. I don't remember.
Okay, so thank you to everybody who stuck with us for the spring season. We look forward to summer, and hopefully we'll do more special episodes, or special segments, I should say, like our Sword Art Online segment. We've got other shows we're really thinking of putting in there, like maybe Assassination Classroom, if I can ever finish it. And, okay, I think it's late, and we should probably wrap up. So good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Peace.